This is Catherine Parker from The Haunting of Hill House. You're listening to Derek Thomas and the Monday Morning Critic podcast.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
My next guest is one of the most talented and diverse actors I've ever had on the show. Please welcome W.Earl Brown to the show. He's one of the best actors on the planet, certainly one of my favorites. Earl, how's life treating you today?
It's going pretty good. I got a day off.
Excellent, man. I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to kiss your ass a little bit here. You have perhaps the funniest pinned tweet I have ever read in my life. And for those of you that are listening, I will go through it really quick. In my career, I've been killed 28 times so far. I've killed way over 40, and I lost my baseball. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I could not stop laughing at that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man, that's just that. And I have to say, so I'm reading some of your tweets here, and before I get into your life a little bit. One, I completely agree with your take on casting directors and how they should receive some type of recognition from the Academy. I am so on board with you on that.
Well, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw that David Rubin had been named president of the Academy, that finally they should be able to get recognition. Because it's the only department in all of filmmaking, the only department head, there's a head of casting, that there's no Oscar recognition, and there never has been. And that's wrong. So hopefully it will be rectified.
No, that's insane, because I have to tell you, Earl, the fact that I had Jackie Birch on the show, I want to say a year ago. I mean, she was the backbone for those unbelievable John Hughes movies early on. She's one of the best casting directors on the planet. And people don't know that because, I mean, they do know that, but you're right. There's got to be some type of recognition for these people's great work. Yeah, I'm on board. And two more things before I get into your life. You're a huge Kiss fan. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm a huge music fan.
Right.
Just across the board. That's like, I go to a lot of live shows. But yes, as a kid, one of the things that right around the time I first had the cognizant thought that I want to be in movies, I was a rabid Kiss fan. Yes. And then, I've gone and seen them numerous times over the years. You must have been following my tweets.
I am, man.
I'm going on the Kiss cruise. I've been invited in years past to go, and I can finally do it. I finished production on this show I'm working on right now, right about the time of the cruise. So that was like, you know what? I'm going. So one of my buddies, musician buddies from Nashville, is going with me because my wife has no desire. But yeah, I'm a Kiss fan, and I'm going to go see them tomorrow night in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, I gotta say, so is it like a legitimate cruise where you're away for a couple weeks? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's a 5-day cruise. It's a music cruise. I've done it. The Outlaw Country Cruise, which is XM Sirius's Outlaw, and they do it in conjunction with Sixth Man. Sixth Man also produces the Kiss Cruise. Right. It's on the same boat. It's the same everything. That's how I've been invited, because I've gotten to know all those guys. And they found out I was a Kiss fan. Like, you got to come on our Kiss boat. So, yeah, I'm finally doing it.
Yeah,
it will be me and 2,500 other drunken yahoos rock and rolling all night and partying every day in the Kiss Navy, man.
And I got to say, man, Gene Simmons does not get enough credit. He's done some beautiful things with Make-A-Wish kids, but that's another story for another time. They do some really sweet things that people don't know about. But my last tweet that I wanted to just, before I get into your life, is your recognition of the show The Boys on Prime. How freaking great is that show, Earl?
Yeah, I love it. I still got two episodes, I think, left to go. It's disturbing but I'm riveted to it. It's such it's a social satire and a commentary on the world we live in, and the business that we work in, and the political system that we're all living in. It's really, really good.
And when you think about it, and I won't ruin it for you because you have 2 left, but when you think about it, though, that's exactly how superheroes would be if they existed. They wouldn't be like the Marvel crew. They would be people that were exactly like this, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So let's get into your amazing life, man, here. So you're born in Western Kentucky. So the acting bug and performance bug has got to bite you right at grandparents' house, right? Because they do a lot of, I don't want to say entertaining because that's a terrible word. They put on how would you phrase it, Earl?
I've said before, the first theater I ever attended was my grandparents' front porch.
That's it, yeah.
It was farming culture. And on the weekends, or on Sundays, usually Sunday afternoons after church, that's where everyone would gather, because that was the one day they wouldn't be working. But the first time I really thought that I want to do that, I mentioned earlier, I was freshman year in high school, 3 movies that just blew me away. It was the summer of 77, 78. Star Wars, Halloween, Animal House. Those are the ones. This is pre videotape rentals. If you saw a movie, you had to see it in theaters. So the movies I went back to see multiple times were those 3, and they were the ones that really planted the seed. I'm told by a family friend, I do not remember this, but I can remember being a ham as a kid and telling jokes and that stuff. But she swears when I was around 5 years old at my grandmother's house, she said, she goes, "You looked at me and you said, one day I'm going to be an actor in movies."
Wow.
I don't remember it. But she swears that it. So I guess that seed was planted earlier than Animal House.
Yeah, and I have to say, one of the things that you have that is really difficult to get, like either you have it or you don't, that's my opinion on this, is a sense of humor. Because I always have those people, Earl, that say, well, I'm funny. Like, if you have to tell somebody you're funny, Earl, you're not funny. Like, people either see it or they don't. And I believe you've got that. You've got that about you.
Thanks. There is a thing of timing that is kind of an inherent thing that if people don't have it, you can't learn it. It is an innate thing. Well, but that really goes to any kind of skill in any creative pursuit. But yes, I do think there's a lot of great stand-up comics who are not good actors, and there's a lot of great actors who can't do comedy. And I always found myself drawn towards the artists that kind of did everything. Right. And Shel Silverstein and Chris Christopherson and, musicians and writers and painters and actors. Because I really think it all comes from the same place. There's different skill sets, craft skills involved, but that need to create and live in the moment and share that, and connect with that, I think is universal.
No, that's really well said. And I was talking to Ann Cusack, who's in the Boys, and she brought up Second City in Chicago, and she was talking about that and how you mentioned timing, right? So she was really focused on the timing part of it. So it's interesting to hear you say it that way. It's really, really well said, Earl.
Yeah.
So
and it's different. Like just a story from my resume in how you approach stuff. I was a rabid Seinfeld fan, and I ended up getting cast on Seinfeld with a guest star.
Right.
And I'd never really been around any of those guys. And Larry had just won the WGA award for Master of My Domain, which I think, alongside Vitamin to Vegemin and Lucy, is the best half hour of television comedy ever written.
I agree.
There's some Norman Lear stuff that I would probably put in that pantheon, but anyway, he just won, so I find myself on the show. And they fired another co-star in the middle of that week. I hadn't seen Larry the entire time, and we were about to shoot. And mine was one big scene at the top of the show that sets the A and B storylines into play. It's a big scene on a bus with George and Jerry. So we'd been rehearsing on the set. Well, we're going to pre-tape that on an actual bus. So Larry shows up for the rehearsals. We go through it, and as they're pulling the bus on the soundstage, he goes, Earl, yeah. He goes, come with me. The scene's not working. It's not that. Come with me. So we go down to the other end of the stage, and he says, let's run it. I'll be George and Jerry. You be Al. Let's run it. So we do it 2 or 3 times, and he had this annoying habit of shaking his head no ever so slightly as we're doing it. He goes, all right, tell you what, let's switch. I'll be Al, you be George and Jerry, let's switch. So we do it a couple of times, switching roles. He goes, all right, let's switch back. So we switch back. I start doing the scene. He starts shaking his damned head. I don't lose my cool. Hardly ever do I even get nervous.
Right.
But, man, my ass was clenching in that. I'm like, I'm going to get fired. I said, all right, but let's. And as he's shaking his head, no, I went, I don't. All right, what's the intention at the top of this scene? I mean, the beat, because I think of it in terms of beats and intentions as an actor.
Right.
Like you enter a scene, you have a purpose for entering a scene. That whole purpose, that arc leads you through the scene, and you have beats that change through the course of things leading toward this purpose. So that's the way I think of stuff.
Right.
And I said, so, my intention when I enter the scene, I don't understand from this beat. And he's looking at me with this incredulous look on his face. And it hit me. Like, I said, I didn't say this, but I thought it. He doesn't think like a playwright. He doesn't think like beats and intentions. He's strictly comic rhythms. That's it.
Right.
The comic rhythm and pace of the thing. And I went, oh, fuck it, let's do it again. So I go back to the top, and I basically impersonated him doing the part.
Right.
Yeah, that's it, Earl. That's it. That's the scene. So, that was a learning process because that's the way he approached stuff. And then, of course, when he put himself in the scene as the man in the cape, sitting on the bus. Yep. And we get on the bus. I was too tall for the lights. I had to squat so that my face would appear on camera. I had to turn. It was the most unnatural thing in the world. On camera, on the frame, it looked fine. But what I had to do was incredibly uncomfortable. And then as we start filming the damn scene, I can see his bald head in the corner of my eye shaking no. So when he says that, the Larry Sanders Show, it's an exaggerated version of my personality. No, it's not exaggerated. No, there's an exaggeration there.
But that's like, so Earl, that's a great point you bring up, because you kind of, he just has a different approach of kind of how to do things. And I mean, look at when I said you were a diverse actor, I wasn't kidding. I mean, all your work, your filmography is amazing. So you must, as an actor, those are the little things you have to learn along the way that obviously make you the actor you are today, right? It's those little moments, right? Is that a good way of looking at it?
Yes, yeah. But it's like not every situation are you perfect for. I've got a baseball game on right now. Not every great player fits on every team.
Right.
And in that situation, it was uncomfortable for me. It turns out it's fine. I'm fine in it. I'm in the Seinfeld thing. And then other times there's creative situations where it's just like, it's a perfect fit. You just immediately click in with everybody that you're working with. Deadwood was that.
Right.
Was just a really rare situation that we were all firing on all cylinders, and we knew that we had something unique. And it created a bond that still exists, a very strong bond that still exists between all of us. Yeah,
it's an absolute work of art. I'm going to touch on that in a moment. So yeah, we talked about these experiences. You end up getting a bachelor's degree at Murray State. You get your MFA at DePaul. Two great schools. So we get early on, Earl, that the acting bug has bit you. You're very talented. You're certainly meant to do what you're doing. But who was your biggest influence kind of coming along? We mentioned some movies, we mentioned some moments, but whether it's DePaul or Murray State, is there a mentor or somebody kind of growing up or developing your skill? Is there somebody that you really credit more than anybody else, or is it just all these things taken into account as one? Like, is it?
I think, yes, there's absolutely been great teachers along the way. I think, getting a little metaphysical here, but I think the universe sends you the teachers that you need at these places in your life. You just have to be open and aware, and I can look back. I mean, the first major influence was a high school teacher, our speech and debate coach, Larry England at Callaway County High School. He demanded the best of you. He demanded that you work. And he always said, look, winning is a byproduct of being at your best. And he said, here's the deal. We're all from a farming community in Western Kentucky. There's nothing wrong with being a farmer, with being a carpenter, with as long as you choose that, as long as that's what you want to do with your life. But don't think just because of the background you're from, anything's possible. And my group of friends that were in that group with me are highly successful. One's the senior VP of United Healthcare in Boston. One is the assistant general manager of Jack Daniels in Lynchburg.
Wow.
One he's now on his own, but he was with Oracle for years out of Dallas. And we joke about there was, something in the water amongst us that we kind of fed off of each other and challenged each other. And we all got out and did something else with our lives. That, and then in college, Mark Malinauskas was the head of the theater department. When I just took an acting class on a whim, I had no idea what I was going to do when I started college. I was the first in my family to ever go to college.
Wow.
And wow. Mark had been a professional actor at one point in his life. And he's the one who kind of pulled me inside and went, you have something special. So there was him. There was Don DiPolo at the Second City in Chicago. There was Bella Itkin in graduate school. And then in the professional world, there's really two people who, while they were not formally my teachers, but they were great teachers, was Wes Craven and David Milch.
Wow. Wow.
I learned a lot, not just of the business, but as a person and as an artist. My relationship with those two men was invaluable.
Right.
So
no, I love what your high school teacher said, because a lot of high school, not a lot, but there are teachers out there that kind of, he makes a great point when he says to you, there's nothing wrong with being a farmer, there's nothing wrong with being a carpenter, as long as that's your choice and it's not a default situation, right? So I feel like if more people had people like that in their lives, not that everyone would go to be vice president of Jack Daniels or become a fantastic actor, I'm not saying that, but that's the kind of message kids need to hear. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, Kentucky, California, whatever, as long as you have that that's the kind of support, Earl, that I think people need, and I hope they're getting.
But not let fear hold you back.
Right.
I mean, there's Rilke, I forget the name of the poem, but Rilke said, your fears are the dragons that hold you from your greatest treasures. And I had a buddy who was part of that group with me in high school. We went to college together. And he's the one who first stated this dream. He was going to move to New York or to L.A., and he said, man, I don't want to be 70 years old, which at that point in our lives seemed fucking ancient. He said, man, I don't want to be 70 and look back at my life and wonder what if. Right. I'm going to give myself 3 years. I'm going to go one of those places, and I'm going to give myself 3 years, and if things don't happen, if I do everything I know how to do and it doesn't happen for me, then I'll come back. He had his teaching certificate, and he wanted to be a teacher, but he wanted to be an actor more so. Then his girlfriend ended up pregnant, and he never followed through on that. But that was an epiphanal moment for me of thinking like, that's a great way of viewing my life.
Yeah.
I don't want to worry what if. I don't want to let my fears and doubts keep me from finding an answer. So
yeah, and I don't mean to be patronizing here, but that's like really a beautiful message. It's a message that I think a lot of young adults and kids, I mean, I have a lot of kids, not kids, but, teenagers, 20-somethings that listen to the podcast. That's a great message. I mean, you're right. You don't want to look back later in life and the two words are what if. I mean, that's so well said, Earl. But I don't want to leave DePaul yet because, one, you have an interesting job as a bouncer, and two, you have two interesting classmates in the superiorly talented John C. Reilly and Gillian Anderson. So talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Which part?
The bouncer
John,
part.
Well, John and I was MFA, first year MFA. John was fourth year undergrad. So we're only a year. I'm 1 year older than him. But when I the first quarter, you're not in MFA, you're not in casting pool. Your second quarter, you are. I was cast in Curse of the Starving Class with him. And so that's where I got to know him. Was he played Wesley, the son. I played, I can't remember the character name. Larry Yondo was Weston, the father. I was the guy who had bought the property and was going to turn it into a steak joint. That was with him. And then Jillian she came into school. She and John were separate. He had already graduated at the time she came in. And what was funny with her freshman year, she was the penultimate punk rocker. She had pink and purple hair. She dressed like, she kind of had a thrift shop Madonna thing going on. And she in school, she was always cast as the comic characters. I remember her playing the maid in Flea in Her Ear. It was funny. She and Amy Peets, they were both kind of stars of the undergrad casting pool. And Amy was the serious one, and Jillian was, the clownish one. And then Amy's done a ton of sitcoms. Their professional careers kind of flipped. Right. Because both of them immediately started making living as an actor, or within a few years of graduation. And, Jillian was Dana Scully, and Amy was the slutty neighbor on Caroline in the City.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, and and that's amazing because to get by, I mean, you remind me a lot of John C. Reilly as far as you guys are very much alike. You guys can do drop dead funny. You can do Western. I got to tell you, I saw a movie with John C. Reilly. It was Sisters Brothers on Hulu.
Oh, I love that movie.
I'm like, there's no way he can
that opening shootout. The way he shot with that widescreen, it's in the dark.
Yes,
and you're just seeing the flashes of light from the gunfire.
Yep,
was ingenious.
Yep,
and the movie just kind of died on the vine. Nobody saw it.
And it's insane because it's a fantastic movie, and it's a shame because people associate John C. Reilly as the guy from Step Brothers, which is phenomenal. But he's like you; he can do it all, and it's too bad people kind of have narrow vision when it comes to certain actors. I guess. But
that comes into into the choices that you make.
Right.
With John made his. Well, first of all, he got cast, and he was working there in Chicago. He was bagging groceries and doing plays around the city when he got cast in Casualties of War.
Right.
And it was like a 2-scene part. It was the part that Michael J. Fox confessed to this soldier once they were back at base. He confessed what they did in the jungle.
Okay.
Well, that's the role John was cast in. And he'd gone down there and gone through all the soldier training, and I think I'm correct in this story. He had shot his role and had come back. And then they had a relatively known actor in that role who was kind of a screw-up, not kind of, he was a drug-addicted screw-up. And they fired him. And they said, well, get that kid that's in that earlier scenes, he's really good. Get him back here. And so suddenly John's the fourth lead in that movie, and he knocked it out of the park. But then, he did a bunch of small indie dramas before he got into, the broad comedy stuff.
Right.
I guess what was first? Was Talladega Nights first?
It was
like really, really funny.
Well, he was there was some comedy, I guess, in Days of Thunder way back when, which I love, but he was also in.
No, I mean not Days of Thunder, but
no, I know what you're saying. It was. I thought it was Step Brothers, then Talladega Nights. I think, right? I might be off, but
I don't know. It was a 1-2 punch.
Yes,
so
and a good 1-2 punch.
He is wonderful, and don't forget he got Oscar nominated for singing in Chicago.
Wow, that's right,
Mr. Cellophane in Chicago.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to bring up is outside of your love for reading and your love for music, and this is going to sound like, people listening are saying, obviously, but it's not obvious. Like, you are really you're a fan of film. Like, not all actors are film fans. Like, they watch it, they'll be, that's their job, but you really love watching movies and cinema, right? That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, when you watch it, can you enjoy it, or do you enjoy it to the point where you're like, you know what, I would have done this, or, maybe
when I find myself forgetting about the technical part of it, I was like, okay, how many setups did they do in this scene? Oh, I see how instead of a Mac, if I'm not thinking about that kind of shit, then I know it's a great film. Yeah, great. Because I disassociate myself from the technical side of it and get lost in the experience of the story or just the cinema. Sometimes great images and sounds can mash together in the story be not so obvious. Like oh God, what was the movie slipping my mind at the moment? It'll come back to me. Anyway, yes, I am a fan. So how,
and just quickly here, how essential do you view your MFA? How essential was that? I mean, you mentioned some really key people.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have been where you are today without it?
No.
Oh, no. Wow. Okay, so critical.
It just, again, school and training cannot give you talent. But they can give you tools that teach you how to use that talent. And it's also, it's a rabbit hole for young actors to fall into, this pretentiousness of technique. And are you an external actor or an internal actor? What fucking difference does it make? The end product.
Right.
If you don't have a full, rich internal life, if you don't have a believable external life, it's both. Which side of the coin do you prefer? Doesn't fucking matter. You got to have two sides or you don't have a coin.
Right.
And as far as technique, I've used this before. The way I look at it is it's tools on the truck. When a plumber comes here to the house, I have a plumbing problem. The plumber comes in, he takes a look at what the problem is that needs to be solved, and then he goes and gets the appropriate tools off his truck. He doesn't pull in and take every damn tool off his truck and then come in and figure out the job. So that's what technique is.
Right.
And I don't, I'm not a firm believer in any one particular school of training. I think there's legitimacy to all of them.
Right.
So.
No, that's really well said. And for those of you listening, Earl has been in many things. For his sanity, I'm not going to read them all. I'll read a few of Deadwood, Black Mass. By the way, The Highwaymen, really underrated, fantastic film. I had the stuntman on who plays Clyde Barrow, really grounded kid, great going places, really, really nice kid. Preacher, True Detective Season 2, Wild, very underrated, Draft Day. But I did want to talk about something about Marion. Before I got to that, Earl, I wanted to talk a little bit about Peter Farrelly a little bit here. I thought people were unfair to him with Green Book because he did a phenomenal job in that movie. And I felt like he took a lot of shit, and so did the cast. And I was really upset at that because that was Peter's moment. He busted his ass in that movie. And without getting too into it, I just felt like people took away from Peter's moment that he deserved all the accolades he received.
I think so, too. The background to all of the award stuff, they're political campaigns.
Right.
And this, when it started getting dirty, going back in the when I first got in the industry, Harvey Weinstein, really perfected the dirty campaigning of undermining, not just promoting your film, but undermining the others, around you.
Right.
I know Peter. His heart's in the right place. He is a sweet and kind person.
Yes.
And I know it took them several years to get that movie together. And his co-writer is Tony's son. So he's trying to make a movie to honor his dad, So, yeah, I thought a lot of the backlash to it was it's a very conventional film. It's a feel-good film about a very complicated subject that's not really feel-good all the time. But that's the kind of movie it is. And for what kind of movie it is, I think it's incredibly well made. Yeah. It's funny. It's touching. So, yeah, it was a little tough seeing Pete, all of those guys kind of get run through the ringer.
Yeah, you mentioned Nick Vallelonga. He was on the podcast. I said, you're going to win the Golden Globe and Academy Award. He's like, yeah, right. And I'll take my credit for that. But he took a lot of shit too. He's writing about his father, right? So I mean, I don't know. I thought it was an amazing movie, and I thought they poured their hearts into it. And the idea that you'd think the acting community would not sabotage other, and it's not just the acting community. It reached out further than that they wouldn't sabotage these just great movies, right? The heart's in the right place. It's not 100% historically accurate because no film is. But you brought up
it's kind of it's an old-fashioned movie,
right?
It is. It's sentimentality. It's its viewpoint of that subject feels like something from 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's what kind of movie it is. Now, it could have been much darker. It could have been much more biting and hard-hitting. It wouldn't have gotten the same audience that it got, And I felt the same thing about Bohemian Rhapsody. I was having a conversation with a person I'm working with now, and she was talking about, in her LGBT community that, Freddie is such the icon. And we were discussing the movie, and she wanted it to delve more deeply into, Freddie's sexuality. That was my point of that movie. It absolutely could have. Mm-hmm. Again, it simplified a much more complicated situation. It would not have played as widely as it did. And there are people that I grew up with, in the small town, who loved Queen, back when we were kids, with no idea. They loved the Village People, too. And even back then, I want to go, I don't think Macho Man means exactly what you think it means, but Bohemian Rhapsody is so well done for what it is. I think that, some of those folks have watched the film and be much more open and accepting than if it got, again, deeper into his sexuality. So that's the thing. When you make a broad playing project for, superficial is not the right word because neither of those films are superficial.
Right.
Neither of them denied. It would have been, hey, you could have made a Freddie Mercury movie and completely denied his homosexuality. Just not had it in there at all. So that's not what happened. But they're mainstream movies. Right. They're mainstream, wide hit movies. So, yeah, and I like both of them.
Yeah, they're both great. And then let me ask you, so we talk about the 1998 box office smash, Something About Mary, your performance. I'm going to tell you right now, Earl, and again, not because I'm speaking with you, it's one of the best performances I've ever seen, not only in a comedy, in any movie ever. So, man,
thank you.
Thank you for that. And, let me ask you before I get into Warren a little bit, what's happened to comedies? Like, a couple of friends and I who we know our movies, the last 5 to 7 years, I swear, not that there haven't been funny things coming out, but you compare it to some of the stuff you and I have been talking about, the Animal Houses, the Step Brothers, even Talladega Nights. It's like, what happened? Like, there's nothing. If you want to go to the theater to laugh, it's tough to find a comedy that's just fantastic.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I hope Good Boys is as good as the trailers make it out to be.
Yes.
But I don't, the last comedy that really just kind of, the first Hangover, because hell, that's been a decade ago.
Yep, that's 10 years. Yeah, you're right.
And Barat's been a decade ago.
Yep.
No, I can't think of any recent comedies that have really set me back.
Yeah, it's insane. It was like that 2007 had Borat, like you said, Borat came out. There's a couple that came out that were unbelievable. And then there's been a 5 to 7 year lull. I don't know if it's our attitudes and how
it's, those things in all genres, it's always cyclical. There'll be some, but Scream brought back scary movies, brought back horror.
That's true. Yep.
R-rated horror was no one would make one. Are you kidding? It doesn't sell. No audience. And then Scream changed everything. And then Mary, pushed the envelope of what is acceptable on film. And then, but they always get imitated in their wake. I mean, there were so many subpar Screams after Scream.
Right.
There were numerous subpar versions of Mary. They made the mistake that all you got to do is be gross. Grossness was a part of it, but that was not at the core of it. So something will come along. Again, I'm hoping Good Boys, because it looks so damn funny. I agree. And you're so right with what you're saying here. The Farrelly brothers aren't gross for the sake of gross. Everything they do has a point, and it's just so goddamn funny. And when you take a role like Warren, because for those of you listening, Warren was actually the Farrelly brothers' neighbor who played Jack, I want to say, in the movie. Freddie. I'm sorry, Freddie. Yes, and when you take this role, do you have to be careful, or is it just because the people that don't know, you really put there's a little sling blade in there, there's a little what's eating Gilbert grape. This isn't just a guy throwing on headphones and a jacket and just going. You put a lot into this, my man. This was a pretty heavy role. I mean, you have to really, right? You have to put a lot of yourself, and you go ahead. You are the first person to ever really pick up on that. I purposely put homages to the great mentally handicapped characters from the past.
Right.
There's also Of Mice and Men. Did you see when I come in with Brett?
Yes.
When I'm holding the keys, it's a rabbit's foot keychain.
That's right.
I'm stroking the rabbit's foot.
Petting the rabbit's foot, yes.
Yeah. I actually had an overt sling blade joke in there, and Bobby made me take it out. When he's touched my ears and I'm freaked out, and they go to get me, I said, bring me some biscuits with mustard. Just bring biscuits with mustard on a plate. And we had it in one take, and Bobby walks up and he goes, "What's this?" I said, "I told props, because they got to bring me something to calm me down, because I'm so big, I have to eat all the time, so I'm sure food calms me." He went, "Yeah, but that's not our kind of movie. That's a Zucker Brothers film. It's not a Farrelly Brothers film." So that was taken out. But yes, there were purposeful homages to those characters in those films.
And I'm going to say too, Earl, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm going to say too that Ben Stiller, I'm going to say borrowed when he did Simple Jack. I swear he borrowed some of Warren from you. I'm just going to go ahead and say that.
Well, when I read Tropic Thunder, my agent sent it to me. I was with a big agency at that point, and I read it because I knew he and Jack Black's relationship far predated my relationship with Ben.
Right.
And I just knew, this is Jack. This is what Jack is going through right now. Jack, because they'd sent me for that role that Jack had played. So I just knew it's going to be him. But I read it, and the whole monologue that Robert has, the never go full retard monologue. When I saw the movie, I emailed Ben and I went, "Well, that explains my career." Because, I naively thought when I entered the industry, because I'd hear all this stuff about negotiations and people's trailers and, all this peripheral crap. And I always thought, hey, if you do special work, it does well. Special things come your way, And then Mary exploded, and I thought, all right. Well, Scream had happened 2 years before, and I had billing on Scream. I'm Kenny in that movie. But I knew, hell, anybody could have played that. It didn't take anything special to pull off Kenny. There's a few moments in it that are nice, but nothing special. But then Warren came along 2 years later, and I thought, all right, baby, here we go. Here's the big time. Crickets. Nothing. Nothing. I did not get invited to any of the parties, any of the celebrations, any of the award shows. It's like I didn't exist.
Wow. Wait.
And I'm like, oh, okay, sequel, baby. Sequel money. Because I got paid scale to do that movie. Here we go. Sequel? No sequel. So when Tropic Thunder happened, that was my email to Ben. Well, that explains my career.
but here's the thing, Earl. Warren is one of the most legendary characters in the last 20 plus years. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it is one of those things that stands the test of time. And you mentioned something earlier about playing it. They'd been seeing stand-up comics for the role.
Right.
The studio was wanting a name in that role. And the Fairleys were adamant, like, the audience has to believe he's handicapped. They have to believe it. Mm-hmm. If they don't, the comedy won't work.
Right.
So, again, casting's bringing in stand-ups. I knew Rob Moran through mutual friend Amy Peets from the theater school. She had at her house, she would host on Sundays improv games. And it was all working actors. We'd get together and we weren't creating a show. We weren't creating a company. We just played. And Rob was part of it. And then I realized he's not from Chicago. I know him because of the Fairley Brothers movies. And he's the one that got me in the door.
Right.
On that movie. He said, oh my God, Warren, they can't find anybody. They seem like 100 people. So he got me in the door, and I was the only person that played it straight, that didn't try to buffoon it.
Right.
You know, and I just instinctively knew that it's not going to be funny if you try to force the funny, and B, the audience is going to hate you because you're mocking a handicapped person.
You got it. Yep. I totally agree.
So that's what made it work. And one of the sweetest things, you know, and I've been blessed. I mean, I've been incredibly blessed in my career. But this one girl I met once at the Roxy at a concert. She'd come up, she recognized me. She says, I just have to tell you, my mother, I have two brothers, and they both have Down syndrome. And she said, my mom wanted to see something about Mary, and I told her, I don't know if you, and she insisted. So she said, I brought the videotape over, and she said, we put it in. And she goes, I warned Mom. I told her what we were going to see. And she goes, the opening of the film, when you come to have you seen My Baseball, that whole scene? And she goes, my younger brother stood up. He walked to the TV. He points right at you, and he goes, he's special. He's like me.
Oh, my God.
And I said, you know, everybody wants to see their story reflected.
Yes.
You know, and everybody deserves that. I think at the core, the human experience is universal. Whether it's, you know, religions, races, nationality, the human experience is universal. But it's all those other experiences that we have that make us seem separate. And everybody, again, deserves to see. So in this broad, gross comedy that's so non-PC, you could never make that nowadays, people have said. You know, here's this kid who sees himself right there. And so that was a wonderful moment, and I'm very, very proud.
Yeah, you left me with so much to say. One of which is I saw a trailer for a movie you mentioned, the two Down syndrome boys. Shia LaBeouf is coming out with a movie where a Down syndrome actor is the lead. It's called Peanut Butter Falcon. He wants to be a wrestler. It looks phenomenal, Earl. I mean, it's funny that you would mention that. And I got to say, it works for you exactly what you said. You weren't making fun of a person that is special. You were just portraying a character, and I feel like you and Robert Downey Jr. kind of had the same challenge, and you both pulled it off for different reasons beautifully. In the wrong hands, we've seen those kind of roles go sour very quickly.
Oh my gosh, with him in Tropic Thunder, how offensive could that have been?
Oh my God.
If it were not, as I'm reading it, but long before it was shot, I'm like, there's no way. It was like watching the nuts in the zipper in that close-up in Something About Mary, I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to use that. There is no way that's going to end up in the movie. But yes, Robert, his performance in that movie was calibrated so perfectly, that he's skewering self-important actors.
Right.
The whole thing is skewering self-important Hollywood. It was the thing that it was skewering. And the performances and everything about it walked that perfect line. And I think the audience got it.
Yeah, to the point where he was nominated for an Academy Award, which if I think about where that starts with you reading this script, and it sounds ridiculous, right? A guy in blackface, and it ends with an actor being nominated for an Academy Award. Unbelievable. Yeah. Do the Farrelly brothers, Earl, do they tell you, you know what, go with it. Do what you have to do. Make this character your own, because I know a lot of it is your improvisation, people we talked about some of the other things, but do they just say, hey, Earl, go with it? They
had been seeing comics.
Right. Chris Farley was one, right?
Whether that was the casting department or whether that was just them with this list of people to see, but they were thinking, well, we need somebody that's funny.
Right.
And again, to my knowledge, I'm the only straight actor that read for the thing.
Right.
Again, the only one I saw. The people that I saw there were stand-up comics because I'd seen them on Comedy Central and whatnot in stand-up specials. I lost my train of thought. What was the question exactly?
Well, I mean, I asked you if the Farrelly brothers just said, go with it. And,
with them. No, once we got going, they didn't really, as far as my characterization or work, they just kind of let me go.
Right.
The one line that was completely improvised was, he was masturbating! He was masturbating! And that's when they accidentally dropped Ben on the stretcher, which was an accident. So it's like one humiliation after another that are ladled on top of the poor guy, and they just instinctively happened.
Oh, you're going to give me a heart attack. Oh, my God. And, one of the things I did want to ask you is one of the people that did read for it was Chris Farley, right? But he passed, I think, during...
Well, I don't think he didn't read for it. He was on their list.
Yeah, on the list. I'm sorry. Yes,
I'm
on the
told
list.
that.
Yeah.
But he died while we were doing the movie. He passed away, and he was really at that point uninsurable because of the Lewis and Clark movie. I guess he was kind of off the rails.
Yeah.
And had gone further off afterward. So, but yes, he was on the studio's list, I was told, to play the role.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, and I love Chris Farley. He's one of my all-time favorites, but I don't think he would have done the role justice like you did. I think he would have made it a character. You know what I'm saying? I think he would have done what you shouldn't do with that character, So just a couple more questions, man. Thank you so much for giving me all of your time here. You're a huge music fan. I don't know, did you see the movie Yesterday, the one about the Beatles?
No, I haven't.
Because...
Did you see it?
No, yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because I know you have a huge, you're big time into music, and it's just the great notion, and I think you would appreciate it, is if the Beatles there's a storm and the Beatles don't exist into anybody but this one person.
I know the premise of the film,
and it's
so odd with it's coming out at the same time Blinded by the Light is.
Yes.
And it's like it's like the two asteroid movies in 1998,
right?
So it's easy to confuse the two. But because I went through a huge Bruce Springsteen phase in the 80s, so I plan on seeing that one. I know Yesterday's out of theaters by now, but I'm sure it'll be streaming before I know it.
Yeah,
but no, I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, and Rocket Man was fantastic too. But let me ask.
Yeah, I like Rocket Man.
Who are some of your musical influences? I know that from reading a lot about it. But who do you credit, or are you just wide open when it comes to music?
I like. There's stuff I like from all genres. What I can play, I love jazz. I can't play jazz. It's beyond me.
Right.
I don't have the technical skills. I play with Sacred Cowboys. I'm a pretty good singer, and I play guitar well enough that I can keep up with the real musicians.
Right.
But Steve Earle is I've seen Steve 56 58 times.
Wow.
I know Steve now, so I've known him for 20 years. But his work, which kind of combined, I grew up with country music. My mother, in the late 60s, early 70s, when I was a kid, my mom, she'd go to concerts all the time and took me along. I saw Johnny Cash. I saw the Oak Ridge Boys when they were still a gospel group.
Wow.
I saw Merle Haggard. I saw Loretta Lynn. My first show was the Porter Wagner Show. I was 4 years old, County Fairgrounds. Porter Wagner Show with Dolly Parton.
Wow.
And it was the first time I'd ever seen people that I watched on TV that I saw in person. And because Dolly had just started with on Porter then, and I remember this epiphanal moment of they're real people,
Right.
You know,
Right.
But then puberty hit, and I bought a Kiss record. And, Kiss Alive came out 3 days after my 12th birthday, and my world changed, and that kind of opened me up to hard rock, and then to punk rock. And it wasn't when I moved away to Chicago is when I was really learning to play guitar. And I was still homesick and lost in the big city. And WXRT would play Steve Earle. And I remember hearing Copperhead Road the first time, and the hair on the back of my neck literally stood up the first time I heard that song.
Wow.
Like, holy sh! This is country music, but this is kind of metal too.
Right.
Kind of got a hard rock thing. So that was kind of imprinted upon me. But now, I love the Drive-By Truckers. I love Isbell. Mostly Americana kind of stuff. The John Prine record is probably my favorite record in the last year. Tree of Forgiveness.
Right.
It's absolute genius. Had a moment. It's common knowledge. David Milch has Alzheimer's, and we got to do the Deadwood movie, and it was such a blessing. I mean, a blessing to be back in that place with those people. I couldn't let go of it 13 years ago. I said the show didn't end, the show stopped.
Right.
And I worked on the writing staff of the show too, so it was my life 24/7. And I had no clue. I'm like, we're a hit. We're still growing. So we got cut off at the knees, and I couldn't accept it. So to be back in that moment, and do that movie, it gave me a sense of closure. I can accept, with the way things came about.
Right.
And anyway, I was over at Dave's office. This is before the movie came out. And we're sitting there chatting, and he was having a pretty good day. And we had invited Prine to come visit the set, or I did, because Regina Corrado and Brittany, David's assistant, they're huge Prine fans. I'm like, John Prine? Yeah. So I invited John. He couldn't make it. Isbell came out. He spent some time on the set, introduced them to his music. And then my buddy Jerry Cantrell, he came out and played cowboy. But Prine, we're sitting there in the office, and they're talking about, oh my God, Tree of Forgiveness, and When I Get to Heaven. Well, they had stepped out, and David says they had a song that they were talking about. That John Prine, can I hear that? Is there a way to play that for me? So I pull it up streaming, and When I Get to Heaven, it's the last song on John's record, and it's so touching, and it's funny. That's what John can do. He can break your heart and make you burst out laughing in the same phrase. So I play that song, and it ends. Milch kind of sits there, and he looks at me, and he says, "You know what? I hope that John Prine is right." That's a moment that will never leave me as long as I draw breath.
Right.
I don't think it'll leave me after I quit drawing breath either, to be honest.
Right. Well said. And, one of the things that I forgot to mention was, you were a writer on Deadwood. And to hear you talk about that, it's not really – because the Walking Dead actors that I have on the show kind of said the same thing you did. It was more – if I'm over the top here, let me know. It's like a family, right? When you're on set, it's like –
it's absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to believe when you're on a set like that, the chances of that happening again are minute, because – you view everyone there as a part of your extended family. And as an actor, I would have to believe, Earl, that that's the experience you really just desire as an actor.
Yeah, it is. It's with Deadwood, and this goes for the audience. You can't passively watch that show.
Right.
You know, like the network shows that are on, they're just entertainments. It's easy to kind of turn it on and zone out. Okay, I know, you know where the story's going to go because you've seen it. You know, with Deadwood, you didn't. And you never knew where that mad mind of Bilch was going to be leading you tomorrow.
Right.
Or hell, today, the next moment. So it was exhilarating. So when I meet Deadwood fans, they don't want to talk about, oh, you're in movies. No, they want to talk about the story or a character or some moment in that show.
Right.
Because they are engaged, you know, intellectually, spiritually engaged. Well, that's exactly what it was for everybody on the creative side of it. You can't just show up, hit your mark, say your lines, change your clothes, and go home. It required much, much more of you. You know,
right.
Your investment of yourself. Because David had a way of absorbing who you are, the person, into the character he's creating for you that you are inhabiting. So it became a part of you. And we all knew as we were doing it that we had something nobody had ever really seen before. This kind of inversion of the American Western with this heightened language that's incredibly vulgar,
right.
You know?
Right.
So we knew in the moment that we had something very rare, which made it all the more difficult for it to be treated the way that it was. To be treated as a pawn, you know, with a CEO who was desperate to save his job. So we were pawned off.
Yeah, that was kind of disgusting. That was disgusting. And the good thing what you just mentioned is people can sense when a story means the world to them. When actors are acting because they love the people around them, they love the story. Versus, like you said, just say your lines and get out. That's why Deadwood is one of the most special shows of all time.
Yep.
You know, and when you were on Rich Eisen, I told you this off the air that, you know, I watched your interview. I think he said to you that he watches every episode twice with his wife.
Yeah.
That's how much you like. So my last question for you, give me so much of your time. I know you're a huge Bears fan. What was it like working with A, Brett Favre, and B, and B, what is your? I love your quarterback, by the way. I live in Massachusetts. We have a pretty good quarterback. Oh my God, I got to tell you, I love the way the Bears are put together here. Tell me your thoughts on Favre and your thoughts on the 2019 Bears.
Well, I haven't, with the Bears, this pretty much goes with any club. I haven't paid that much attention to what's happened in the offseason.
Right.
So as far as predictions for the season, I don't really know.
Right.
But with Favre, you know, because you're supposed to hate the Packers. That's the arch rival. And it always was. The thing I liked about the Packers was the fact that the fans own the team.
Yes.
You know,
yep.
Green Bay, the citizens of Green Bay are stockholders in that. They own the team.
Right.
And the fact that it's a small town, really. It's not a big city.
Nope.
But so I always liked that. But Packers, no. Bears got to beat the Packers' ass. Well, when we ended up with the movie, I hit it off with Favre. I mean, we're both country kids, you know, and we just immediately struck it up.
Right.
And at the end, you see more of it in the credits. It's just written that Warren walks in with Favre. They added in that scene, by the way. Warren's not in that. They added me in more later in the movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
When they first... certain exec who's kind of made his career off of Mary, I am told, had concerns when he saw the early dailies. It's too real. It's uncomfortable. It's too real, meaning my performance.
Right.
We know how that all played out. Oh my God, this was leading somewhere. I was parsing.
You were talking about your rapport with Favre and two country boys.
They go the first couple of days thinking they might replace me on the movie to wanting more of me in the movie. So Warren was just tapped into that scene. So it has me just coming in with Favre, and Brett Favre enters the scene with Warren behind him. Well, I said, let's We rehearsed, and Brett was really nervous. He'd never done anything like that before. He had done one commercial before ever doing our movie.
Right.
So he's nervous.
Right.
And I go to Bobby, and I said, hey, you know what would be funny is if I come in on his back. So we piggyback the joke at the, oh my God, do it, just do it, just do it. So I go out and then back to the one outside the door, and I told Brett, I said, did you read the script? Oh, I said, did you get the whole script? He goes, yeah, but I said, did you read it? He goes, I just really, this part, really. I said, well, there's a scene at the top, piggyback ride. And I said, so what we're going to do is bookend. He goes, oh, man, that'd be funny, man. So he just picks me up. You know, I weighed 250 something. We were doing it. He just picks me up. So we walk in. Everybody dies laughing. Oh, my God. So funny, so funny, so funny. So the producer, one of them comes over to me, Charlie Wessler, and he goes, we need to get an apple box out there. You know, Farm, he's got a back injury. He got hurt this season. If we cause more injury, so they bring an apple box out so Brett doesn't have to pick me up, you know, from the ground.
Right.
So we do a couple of takes, and I said, you know what would be funny? To tackle that he touches my ear and I tackle him. So I go out to him. Okay, I said, okay, if anybody touches my ear, I freak the fuck out. And like I beat the shit out of Ben at the top of the movie because he touches my ear. I said, so when you ask for a pen, touch my ears. Ask me if I have a pen and pull my earmuffs. And so we do it. We do it in the take. Of course, again, and cut. And everybody's rolling with laughter. Well, here comes Charlie and one of the other producers. What did I tell you? What is that? I said, well, hey, we're landing on a couch. Look, I can't tell. The liability that well, Favre hears this.
Yeah.
He hears it. I don't realize it at the moment. I said, look, here's the deal. We can cut. I mean, the joke is going to be that I'm tackling him. So we can take the cut on as soon as my shoulder hits his solar plexus. We can cut there, and the joke will still work. So I'll just stop. Hey, but you can't. Don't hurt him. He's a pro. He's a Hall of League MVP for 2 years. I barely played high school football. I don't think I'm going to hurt him. So we go to do the next take, and I go to pretend like I'm going to tackle Brett, thinking I'm going to stop. He grabs me by the shirt and flips backward over the couch. We broke the end table and the lamp. And you can see it in the outtake. That's the one, because I'm basically at a 90-degree angle pile driving him into the couch.
Right.
And when we finish, he gets up off the couch. He doesn't say anything. He just kind of grabs the small of his back and limps off set. They were on me like flies on shit. What the fuck did I tell you? I didn't. He did it. I didn't. I stopped. He did it. And Favre leans around the corner, dying laughing, man, slapping his knee.
But I gotta say, Earl, and this will be the last thing I say, is that people should listen to your ideas more, because you gave a suggestion during the Deadwood pilot. It worked great. You gave a suggestion here. It works great, right? I mean, yeah. Which is your ability as a writer.
Not all of my ideas are brilliant. Just 90% of them.
His name is W.Earl Brown. If you knew how much this interview meant to me, you wouldn't believe it. I cannot thank you enough